Tape deck? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, right, yeah. Good. Are you ready?
Yeah, it's running.
Okay.
Both of yours going?
Yep. All right. All right, the first thing is, how many of you reviewed what we did last time?
But not with Woody. I couldn't really, I did my own chart.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that is because there was an error in what we did last time. So if you look at Margaret Thatcher, and you look down at number 14, it's supposed to be 7 and 6 and not 9 and 4. So these are new ones that are correct.
We could just change that.
Yeah, but I mean, we could just change it, but I just, you know, that's the whole thing. So these are corrected copies. We're looking at number 14, 7 and 6.
Okay.
And what it was a clerical error. And this shows the horoscope is even more balanced than we thought before. Now, this brings up something that is really important. Always, always check or recheck any calculation, even if you're just counting something. And if possible, have somebody else check for you, because you might make the same mistake in thinking or overlooking things. Even if a horoscope is generated by a computer, you have to check it out, because there's, yeah.
I have 9-4 on application.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 7-6.
Oh, you're giving us the right one.
Yeah,
Okay,
giving
I thought
the-
it was 7-6 and it should be, okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah. But sometimes the data gets entered wrong into the computer. And when that happens, you know, there are errors. When people used to make horoscopes with hand calculations, you know, with tables of logarithms and things like that, I found that more horoscopes had errors than were error-free. And you can't possibly hope to make good judgments or to get really sound intuitions from incorrect data. So it's very, very important that these things be checked out in every case. All right, now we're ready to go with tonight. I especially am prone to clerical errors. I can remember a time that in a geometry class, I was the only person to write a perfect theory paper in the entire class. And one of the people was a big-time math person, and he didn't get it all correct. But I got a C on the paper because I did things like 3 times 5 equals 8. Those kinds of errors. This is what we're doing tonight. Bonnie? What's
this?
This is for tonight.
This is Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, they're both on there, Margaret Thatcher and Woody Allen. We're going to be working with the Thatcher chart tonight. Oh, yeah, the Woody Allen is in there.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Woody Allen.
Okay.
And this is something also that I have triple checked. In fact, everything tonight in terms of mathematics and counting I've triple checked. This was your assignment. Did you all come out with the same thing?
No.
You didn't. What did you come up with?
An application, I got 9 of 5 and 3 separating. I don't know how to do application inspiration.
Okay. Let's work through it. Let's look first at the activity test. There are 12 aspects, which is merely a matter of counting from the table. Whee!
Looking at Thatcher again?
We're looking at Woody Allen now. We're doing the same thing for Woody Allen that we did for Margaret Thatcher. And if we... What? If we count... Oh, this
Wait
is...
a second.
This... Okay. All right. There. All right. All right, if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we can see then that on the activity test, we get 12 aspects. This is a low, middle of the road, so it's probably somebody that is somebody that wants to avoid extremes in doing things. And if you look at a lot of his movies, he made a lot of movies of several types, but each one was not vastly different from the others. They were all Woody Allen, so that's sort of middle of the road, different types, but yet with the same quality to it. If he had fewer aspects, probably his movies would have been formula movies. They would have all been followed along the same thing because that's the way he knew to do things. You know, there are Westerns like that. In fact, the whole movie industry is like that now, that they're very formulaic. At so many minutes into the movie, you have to have a chase or you have to have a fight or something like that. They're very limited in what they do. So he knows enough, you could say, to not put too many frills in a movie because that doesn't, it's too expensive for that. But it's middle of the road. It's not a formula movie and it's not a lot of frills. All right, the next one is the intensity test and profile. And there we would have to, the visuals in here are not very good. Oh. We would have to count out, look at each one of the aspects and see which one was of high intensity, which one was of low intensity, and which one was of medium intensity. And count them up. And what we end up with, on the back of the sheet you have the listings of what is high or low. So most of his talents are high intensity, and other than that there are a few that are low intensity. So he's either hot or cold and nothing much in between. And it shows that he doesn't have a lot of, when he phases new things in or phases new things out, there's not a tapered effect. And it probably means that when events occur in his life, they're either really strong events or they are weak events, because usually high intensity aspects produce high intensity events. I don't know what to say more than that. Looking at the quality, there are 2 benefic aspects, 7 malefic aspects, and 3 variable aspects. And the three variable aspects are all conjunctions. But all of those conjunctions are with planets that are only in malefic patterns. So you might just say this is 2-10, 2 benefic and 10 malefic if you give all of the variables the proper weighting. This shows that this is somebody that has a lot of problems. It's almost saying like most of the talents and most of the abilities and tools that he has psychologically are problematic. And this is somebody that sees, at least he used to, see a psychiatrist several days a week because he had so many problems. Basically, we say then this is somebody that has a flawed personality. Now, it's interesting to note, yes?
How, I'm looking at the conjunctions, and you say they're malefic patterns, I think there's Sun conjoined Jupiter.
Yes.
How is that?
But Sun conjoined Jupiter is square to what here? Let's see.
Oh, you look at,
The whole pattern.
okay.
Yeah, the whole pattern of the planet, of the conjunctions. They're all in square patterns, as I recall. All right, so we see then that this is somebody that has problems, and if you look at the 2 benefic aspects, they have to do with Venus and the Moon and with Uranus. So it is in artistic and creative things that he has a positive release. So he really, really depends on them. If we look at application versus separation, we see that there are 5 applying and 7 separating, showing that there's more relaxation and more easing off of tensions, saying that the intensity that he has in life is going to be going down and that life will get easier for him. And since he doesn't have a lot of fixity in his character, it indicates somebody that's probably willing to change. And because he's willing to change, that's what causes things to ease off and not be so hard for him. All right. Oh. Then if we look at the phase test, we find something fairly dramatic again. There are more separating aspects than there are applying aspects. And this says that he's not only a relaxer, but that he is a contemplator. He doesn't always have to be building or doing something new, but he can go back to the same old things and he can contemplate them, and that's what his purpose is in life. He isn't really an innovator. He is what in music would be called, what do they call that, when they copy other people, when they do a copy on other people?
Plagiarism?
No, not plagiarism. I guess a copyist is what you would, cover artist. Yeah, that's the right. Who had that? Bonnie had it? Oh, okay. He's a cover artist. In fact, most of his films have been strongly influenced by Ingmar Bergman. And so that he is like almost a disciple of Ingmar Bergman. And so you can see that he contemplates on those things. All right, now let's do a very little bit of cross-profiling, and just to get a feel of it. When we do that, we want to look at the most dramatic profiles because that's where the cross-profiling is significant. If we take the intensity test, number 12, and the quality test, number 13, it shows that he not only has problems, but it's more likely that his problems are going to be intense. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be a criminal or an invalid, but it just means that within him, it seems like the hard things that he has are so hard. you can't always tell if you pick up a horoscope. This is why you have to observe the human being. You can't study astrology alone. If you pick up the horoscope, you don't know whether it is going to be an invalid or whether it's going to be a criminal or somebody like that with a whole bunch of things. You have to observe and you have to intuit because there are things that go beyond astrology. If we look at the benefics, they are again, the strongest one is the Venus trine the moon, and then there's the Uranus sextile. And it means that he probably goes into artistic endeavors, like his music, and he hangs on for dear life because it's one of the only things that is positive. So like if he is in an orchestra and he's playing, everything is harmonious and everything is positive, and that is very, very important to his health. You know, he has to be an aesthete. If we combine 13 and 14, which is the quality test, which should really be 210 rather than 273 if we do things right, and the application test, it indicates that his problems are likely to be intense, oh no, we were looking at 13 and 14 now, the quality and the application test. It means that he wants relief. He wants to detension. And he's probably going to get that as his way because the horoscope indicates that. Unfortunately, the benefics are also relaxing, and they are his mainstay. Those artistic things are his mainstay, and they're relaxing in life. So hopefully you have to do a very careful examination to see whether the malefics were also relaxing and whether the problems would go away at the same time as the treatment for the problems. I guess this is one of those cases, I think it is William Butler Yeats that talks about schizophrenics. He doesn't use that term. He says they tire out over time, that there are really a lot of old schizophrenics because somehow we mellow out in life. If we add number 15 in there, which is the phase test, half of the first phase aspects are also separating. So the aspects that are separating and that are first phase, where he's trying to build something, there's no traction. So there's not going to be a lot of change from that part of him. But if you look at the other way, the things that are in second phase, most of those are separating. So we have a clear relationship between contemplation and relaxation. He maybe doesn't study something like meditation or something like that, but it is relaxing for him to have an understanding of things. If we combine the intensity test and the phase test, we see that all of the building talents are moderate in intensity. So the contemplation part is going to be of greater intensity, and that's where the relief comes. All right, we'll be able to do more of this when we get all done with the estimation. Now, what we go into is something.
What does the FL stand for again?
What? First or last phase.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Can you take a quick question on this intensity?
Yes.
Info on that separate sheet.
Yep.
You have 2 degrees to 4 degrees.
Applying. Yeah.
Separating.
Applying and separating.
Yeah. And then 4 degrees to 6 degrees, separating it.
Yeah.
Well, if you have 4 degrees in the aspect, how do you know if it's a low or medium? Because 4 degrees
Exactly.
is Yeah.
You have to feel it out.
Oh.
Those are just arbitrary numbers.
Oh.
You have to get a feel for it. All right, now we're going to look again back at Margaret Thatcher. Now, what we're going to do is extremely complicated. And we're going to be doing a lot of estimation. So this is not, if you're new to astrology and you haven't practiced a lot of astrology, this will seem very crazy to you, because this is not elementary material. It's not deep, it's not difficult, it's not complicated too much, but it does require that you be familiar with working with horoscopes in order to appreciate and to make some of the judgments that are going to be made along the way. You have to have some experience. And what we're going to go through tonight and sometime the next time we meet, which will be next fall, is just 2 hits in doing this process. And it takes years in order to really feel comfortable with it. Now, I've done this now for quite a few years, I'd say more than 30 years, and I've had very little feedback because very few students want to go through all of the work that's involved in doing this. And it seems to be of such uncertain value if you don't have the experience with it. If you have the experience with it, you can see it is very valuable. In fact, the things that we're going to do at the very end when we're through the process are things that most astrologers can't do. They might be able to pick it out with intuition, but they don't. It isn't going to be stand out obvious to them. Now, with no feedback or almost no feedback, it turns out that most students like what can be accomplished with it from being in class, but that's enough for them. I expect that most people who work with horoscopes do something like what we're going to do, but they don't do it in quite as formal of a manner. They figure in their head, they add this factor and that factor together, and that gives them an understanding of something. In fact, most of the time, that's what I'm doing. When I'm working with horoscopes, I'm doing these kinds of calculations in my mind, and I don't do all of the filling out of all of the tables for every horoscope that I work with, because it would be too much. I couldn't, I'd be spending all of my time doing astrology. All right. I'm doing mathematical astrology. This is what you have. You have a blank worksheet. This is the front side of it. It's a worksheet. It's called an aspect worksheet. And on the back side of it, there are notes for what each of the, if you look across, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 13 steps to this. And what is done in each of those 13 steps is given on the back side. Now this blank one, the blank one is for purposes of copying. You make copies of it, and that way I can't afford to make these and give them out for every horoscope that you work with each one. So what we're going to do now is for Margaret Thatcher, we're going to fill in that worksheet. I'm going to give you the filled-in worksheet, but I'll show you the step-by-step how we get to that. All right, this is the Margaret Thatcher aspect worksheet. Now, again, we're using only the name. The chart number and the page number are if you're doing a detailed analysis and making a dossier. you want to have more extensive notes for the decisions that you make or the observations that you make along the way, so that later on you can refer to them. And that's, we're not doing that. We're just going through this as an exercise to understand relative strengths of aspects. The purpose for this worksheet is to find out the relative strength of each aspect for each other in relation to each other aspect. So, step number 1, if you read on the back side, it is to make a list of all of the aspects. Now, on the back side, there's a very elaborate way for testing each of the aspects, but we didn't use that because we were able to cheat. All we had to do is go to the aspect chart and just peel them all off. 1, 2. So what I did is I just went row by row. First was the Sun square Pluto, and then the Sun square Neptune, sextile Neptune, and then Sun square Jupiter, and then Sun conjoined Mercury. And then Moon conjoined Neptune, Moon square Venus, and Moon sextile Mercury, and then Mercury sextile Neptune, like that. And that is what we get, just in the order that they appear, row by row, out of the index of the computer-generated chart. Now, step number 2 is intermediary to get to step number 3, because we want to find the orb of influence of each aspect. And so, that means we have to find out how far distant the two planets are from each other. Now, that was done for us in the computer-generated chart. The orb was already given. But I did the work so that you could figure out, you won't always have a computer doing that for you, so I did the work so that you could see how it is done. Now, what we're trying to do is to find relative importance. This is only within one chart. You cannot take the figures from one chart and apply them to another chart, because each chart is different, because each human being and each archetype for each life that they're living through is a unique thing. I don't know of a way that you can really compare between charts. All right. So number 2, column number 2 is the longitudinal distance between the two planets in an aspect. And we're trying to get to the orb. Now, I will do the first 4. I'll tell you how we got to them. Explain how we got to the first 4 are from, from Pluto to the Sun is 94 degrees and 45 minutes. From Moon to Neptune is 55 degrees and 16 minutes. From Sun to Neptune, and from Sun to Jupiter is 84 degrees and 59 minutes. And Sun, the distance between them is 4 degrees and 17 minutes.
The first one you said is Pluto to Sun?
Well, it doesn't make any difference. It's the same way. We'll go through that right now. All right. Pluto is at 1445 of Cancer. The Sun is at 1930 of Libra. So this is how we do it. We go from 1445 of Cancer to 1445 of Leo, that's 30 degrees, to 1445 of Virgo is 60 degrees, and to 1445 of Libra is 90 degrees. But from 1930 to 1445, if you subtract the 1445 from 1930, you get 4 degrees in 45 minutes. And so that's 90 degrees plus 4 degrees and 45 minutes. Does everybody see how we got that? It would go 30, 60, 90, and another 445. You everybody get the same thing? All right, let's do. What's that? Now let's do the same for Neptune. From 24 of Leo to 24 of Virgo is 30 degrees, to 24 of Libra is 60 degrees. But 1930 is less than 2414, so it's less than 60 degrees. So we take 2414 and we subtract 1930, and that gives us 4 degrees 45 minutes. Can that be? No, that gives us 4 degrees and 44 minutes. Do you want me to do the arithmetic on the blackboard?
I've got it.
Okay. So then that gives us 445, so it's 60 degrees minus 445, or 444, which is 55 degrees and 16 minutes. And that's what is entered in to this table. All right, now let's do the Jupiter. From 19 degrees of Libra to 19 of Scorpio is 30, to Sagittarius is 60, to 19 degrees 30 minutes of Capricorn is 90 degrees. But the Jupiter is at 1429, which is less than 1930. So you take the 1930 and you subtract 1429, and that gives you 5 degrees in 1 minute. So 90 degrees minus 5 degrees in 1 minute turns out to be 84 degrees and 59 minutes. All right, fairly simple. And the simplest one of all is the last one I did the calculations for. Oops. Well, come on here. Is Sun to Mercury. Very simple. We just subtract 1930 from 2347, and we get 417. And that is what is entered in right here, 417.
Obviously, you're always going counterclockwise.
No, you take the shortest distance.
Oh.
Yeah, so you go forward through the zodiac. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Everybody understands how we do that, and if you want to, you can sit down with a pencil and paper at home and triple check, which I did because at the double check I found errors yet, and it was only at the triple checking that I didn't find errors. All right. 9445 says that it's 4 degrees and 45 minutes from an exact aspect. And since this is less, it's 4 degrees and 44 minutes from an exact aspect. Here it is 5 degrees in 1 minute. And here the orb is the same as the distance because it's a conjunction. And the same thing with the conjunction of the moon and Neptune. And here it is 326. And that's what the orb is. 9326 is 3 minutes and 26 minutes away from 3 degrees and 26 minutes away from the exact aspect. So on down the line we come up with the orbs. Now you could have done this just taking the orbs straight out of the aspect chart. Taking them right out of here. They all have orbs on them. However, if you had done that in two cases, there would have been 1 minute's difference between what was on the chart generated by the computer and what we did by hand calculating. And what makes that difference is where you do the rounding. And so the rounding factor that is done in the computer program is done at a different place in the calculation process than the rounding factor for finding the exact positions. And 1 minute over 13 aspects, 1 minute off on 2 aspects is negligible. That's what happens when it's something you'd have to do in your own mind. If you were hand calculating all of these, you'd have to round off numbers because it's more or less one way or another. And in fact, when you hand calculate, you use tables of logarithms. And when you use tables of logarithms, you got another kind of rounding factor. So what we're saying is we're accurate in all cases to within 1/2 of a minute, which is 30 seconds, which is pretty good. You don't have to worry about that. All right. Now, if you look, each of these boxes where the orb is has either a S or an A on the left side, or an F or an L on the right side. And there you're entering the S or A means separating or applying. And the F or last means first phase or last phase. So if you do this, make this chart out before you do the profile index, then it's very easy to do the profile index because you've done all the work already. All right, does everybody understand what we've done? Any question about any of it? My goodness, we're going along really fast and we'll be out of here in 45 minutes almost. Wow, all right, but you understand how we got that. Now comes the difficult part. We're now at column number 4, which is the approximation. And the approximation is an arbitrary number. It's taken taking something from 1 to 100. If the scale of an aspect strength is between 1 and 100 in abstract, an arbitrary number is given for various different orbs with application or separation. The numbers have absolutely no meaning other than giving you a feel for an abstract understanding of an aspect. When we get to the very end, when we get to the percentage column, then things are helpful. But in order to get the percentage of strength, we have to get the approximations. And so there we have 2 ways of getting the approximations. One way is I took a lot of time and a lot of trouble and I made approximation tables. This is what a table looks like for applying aspects and for separating aspects. All right. These are approximation numbers, arbitrary numbers for given orbs applying or separating. The other way you can do it is from a curve. This is an estimation curve. If you look, the left side, this is the center line, the left side is longer because that's the applying, and the right side is the separating is shorter. And if you look at it very carefully, the applying of energy is more gradual than the separation. The separation falls off much more quickly. And what you're supposed to be able to do with looking at this curve or at this graph is you're supposed to get the idea of how energy builds up or how tension builds up until there is a high point. And usually at the high point you expect some kind of event. And then after the event, things fall off much more quickly. And basically that's what this is, that's what this curve is supposed to represent. When I first started with all of this years ago, I tried to use sine curves, regular sine waves, and it didn't work because things didn't happen that way. Because the sine wave is symmetric. And clearly, after an event is over, the pressure is off. And, things release very quickly. All right, so that's what... That's what the approximations are made on. Now, this system is not religion. If you want to try your own approximation system, go right ahead. There are various approximation systems. There are astrodynes and cosmodynes, and there are Lilly numbers and things like that. There must be at least 4 or 5 other systems other than this one. I've tried a few of them, not all of them, and they don't match up with reality. They don't match up with what you see when you work with horoscopes a lot. And this is based on what I see working with horoscopes. And that is that what we're saying is the strongest determining factor in an aspect. Remember, this whole course is all about aspects, is the orb. We're saying that close orb aspects are much stronger than looser orbs. They're going to have a stronger influence. They're going to have they're going to be something that's going to stand out. All right, let's take some examples here. Let's take the aspect worksheet here. And we see that the Sun square Pluto has an orb of 4 degrees and 45 minutes, and it's separating. So we look on this separating chart. At 4 degrees 45 minutes. Oh, I got to put the applying one. I put the applying up. I knew that isn't the right number. All right. All right, 4 degrees and 45 minutes separating. To its right, you find the number 24. And that is what we entered into the chart. It's a madman.
You need an intern.
No, I'm through with lap-sitting interns. All right, the next aspect has an orb of 4 degrees 44 minutes, and this one is an applier. And it's 26. The first 2 aspects in the list there are very close in. Oh, that's the separating side, isn't it? And we take 4 degrees and 44 minutes applying, and we get the number 26. All right? You see that? It's a fairly simple procedure. I don't think we need to go through a bunch more because we can see fairly clearly what the situation is. All right, now, when you look here on the aspect worksheet, there's a very heavy black line between step 4 and step 5. If you want to do the short form, you can skip 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 because they are of negligible importance. They're not highly important. If you want to do the short form, you just take 24 and you put it in column 10. You take 26 and put it in column 10, and you take 20 and put it in column 10, and then you're doing the short form. It's all doing the long form is like gilding a lily. And doing the long form is very subjective. It depends on your philosophy, it depends on your intuition, it depends on your experience. So, let's do the long form, though you may not ever want to do it all the way through. The first is the focus bias. And that says that some aspects are stronger just because of their focus. And it says on the back it goes from plus 15% of the approximation to minus 15%. I haven't changed the form, but I never use as much as 15 or minus 15. Instead I use 10% or 5%. The way it is, it's not written on the sheet, but basically the square is of par value. So you see all of the ones that are squares have no change. If it is a conjunction, it is plus 10%. If it is an opposition, it is plus 5%, because those are axial aspects and their intensity is increased because they're axial. The trine is minus 5%, and the sextile is minus 10%. The sextile is, some people don't even use sextiles without an orb of 4 degrees or less. So we see here, this is a sextile, and so that's minus 10%, so I just gave it a minus 2. This is a conjunction, that's the strongest bias, and that's 10% of 29 to give it a plus 3. The same thing with this conjunction. You see what we've done. Very simple thing. All right, now, now we come to column number 6, or step number 6, which is reception. It is the doctrine of astrology that the strongest position for any planet is its ruling position. In its position of rulership, it affects things, like wherever Aries is in the chart will be affected by Mars, no matter where Mars is in the horoscope. And rulership is the only thing that has that ability. Detriment is sort of the negative quality of that, but it's not quite as strong. Now, when a planet is in the sign that is in an aspect with another planet, and it is in the sign ruled by that other planet, the aspect gets a little bit more strength because of reception. If both planets are in each other's sign, that is called mutual reception. And that is much, much stronger if there's a mutual reception. If one planet is in the detriment to the other planet, it is weakened, but not weakened very highly. And if both planets are in each other's detriment, the weakening is substantial. In this case, we have only partial receptions. We have the Sun and Neptune, we have Saturn and Jupiter, and we have Saturn and Pluto. Now let's look at it and see why that is.
I have a question.
Yes.
While we're on that. You mentioned mutual reception. What about if they
that gets measured somewhere else. That does bring up an important scientific thing. You only measure something once, because if you count it twice, then that biases, makes things appear to be something that they really aren't. The thing that we're going to do in the next meeting next fall, we'll be going into that. All right. We're looking at the sun in Pluto. Pluto is not in the sun sign. Oh no, we're looking at the sun in Neptune. The sun is in Libra, which is nothing for Neptune, but Neptune is in Leo, which is ruled by the sun, so the aspect picks up a little bit of energy that way. Saturn is in Scorpio, which is nothing to Jupiter, but Jupiter is in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, so you pick up a little bit of energy there. What was the third one? Let's see what it is here. Saturn and Pluto, on the trine between Saturn and Pluto. Cancer is nothing to Saturn. It's the detriment. It'll take a little bit away from there. But Saturn is in Scorpio, which is Pluto's sign. So we're a little bit generous. This is why this is so tedious and painstaking. We're maybe a little generous in giving 5 points for the Saturn-Pluto, because Pluto is in Saturn's detriment, so maybe giving it a +4 rather than a +5. But you understand that we're really at nitpicky level. All right. Now let's look at mutual agreement. And this is very subjective. It's a matter of experience or it's a matter of intuition, but it's highly subjective. Mutual agreement is how well the two planets work together with each other. Yeah, that they work together well enough so that they're both augmented by working together, or do they conflict with each other and weaken each other? Let's just look at this. We have a +2 for Sun and Pluto, and I thought that was building because they are both power planets. Mercury, Neptune, and the Sun, that's something of a detriment because the Sun is concentrating and Jupiter is diffusive. The Sun and Jupiter, what is this? I'm running out of gas here. The Sun and Jupiter, they're both positive, they're both benefic, so they work well together. The Neptune and the Moon are both highly imaginative planets, so they work together strong enough to give them a +3. The Venus and the Moon are both feminine planets, and they both share a feminine psychology working together. Mercury and Neptune are both mental planets. I'm out of gas. Mercury and Neptune are both mental planets, so they get a little something. Mercury and the Moon. Mercury and Neptune get the highest hit because they are planetary octaves. And when you have planetary octaves, everything gets boosted a little bit, quite a little bit. And in this case, Mars and Pluto are also planetary octaves. Nothing special in the way that Mars and Jupiter work with each other. Nothing special in the way that Jupiter and Pluto, I suppose you could, if your feelings or your personal philosophy about those planets is such, you could have some evaluation. There's a +3 given to Jupiter and Saturn because they are planetary opposites. And there's always a special resonance between planetary opposites. Saturn and Pluto both are dark, heavy, fatalistic planets, so they work very well together. All right, does everybody...
About Saturn and Pluto. I was going to ask, since Pluto, I think Pluto's in the 8th house, isn't it?
Yes.
So does it give it some added strength?
No, that's in a different thing. That's what we're going to do the next time.
Oh, okay.
But you see, we're going through everything you could, even if you don't do steps 5 through 9, you're missing something because it doesn't change the numbers much. It doesn't change any of the ranking order of things. But you have looked at a lot of factors, and they're in the back of your mind, and that's an important thing to do, to have as much information about everything as possible. All right. The next column is column 8, which is aspect agreement. That is whether the planet likes the aspect or not, or whether both planets like the aspect or not. We said that when we talked about the static approach to the aspect, we said that the conjunction was co-ruled by the Sun. In this case, Pluto likes to square. So you give it a +1, which is not much. You give +1 to the sextile because of Sun and Neptune, because Neptune likes sextiles. The Sun is sort of indifferent to it. A -1 because neither the Sun nor Jupiter really like squares. Sun conjoined Mercury. The Sun. That's a rulership of the Sun, is the conjunction. The Moon and Neptune, neither of them will like a conjunction. The Moon and Venus, neither of them like squares, and so on down the line. You can see that there's not much changed in terms of principal value. All right, and then the last column is column number 9.
Who likes squares?
Mars likes squares, Pluto likes squares, sometimes Saturn likes squares.
Mars likes squares?
What? Yes, Mars rules the square.
Opposition?
No, Mars rules the square. Remember, we even had a part of a talk on that, the fact that the square was co-ruled by Mars and Saturn. All right. Now, collection of light. Only 2 aspects have collection of light, but this is sort of a pseudo collection of light, because the definition of a collection of light in specific is much more exact. Now let's look at them. They're Mercury sextile Moon and Saturn trine Pluto. Now it's when I wish I had the laser pointer. All right, Mercury sextile Moon. Mercury's at 23, the Moon is at 28. They both form an aspect with another planet, which is Neptune. But Neptune is between 28 and 23. Therefore, the sextile between Mercury and the Moon gets juiced up a little bit because Neptune is in there collecting or drawing in the orb closer. Do you get what the idea is? All right. The other case we have is Saturn and Pluto. They form a trine with each other. They both aspect Jupiter. And, oh, did I make an error here?
I was wondering where the light comes from there.
Yeah. Or is there another one in there? Mars. No, it isn't. That's an error. That shouldn't be in there. So we'll have to correct that. See, if it were in between 1429 and 1445, there would be a collection of light. But it is not. There is not another that is not there. So there's an error in there. We're off by 3 minutes in the Saturn trine Pluto. All right. So I'll correct it in the next time we meet. See, that's what I say. You have to find me a secretary that's cute, that wants to correct. All right. So, the step 10 is totaling everything up from step 4 through step 9. 24 plus 2 plus 1 is 27. 26 minus 2 minus 4 plus 1 plus 2, 28. 20, 22 minus 1, 21. You see how we get what we got. The only difference is that when it gets down to Saturn trine Pluto, because that 3 for collection of light is not there, it's going to be 85 rather than 83. All right, then what we do, this is the final that we want to get, is we take and we put the highest number at the top. And the highest number is Jupiter opposite Pluto. And that is what is at the top. Saturn and Pluto is going to go down. It's going to be 85, so it's going to be number 3, whereas Mercury sextile Neptune will be number 2. And you can see that that gives us the order. We're saying then that the strongest planet is Jupiter opposite Pluto, which is what you would expect with a conservative, very much what you would expect with a conservative. Saturn trine Pluto is also, it's number 3, not number 2, but that means 2 of the top 3 aspects are very conservative aspects. And the second strongest, because we missed that collection of light, the second strongest is Mercury's Neptune. We're saying that the weakest aspect is Sun square Jupiter. And after that, we can get to something that is usable. The usability comes when we add all of these numbers up and we get a total of 1622, which is actually going to be 6219 when we get it all done because of the correcting for that error, which means I'm going to have to redo the whole of the, and then you say 97 is what percentage of the total? And it turns out to be 16%. And this means that of all of the activity, 16% of it is going to be ruled by Pluto opposite Jupiter. This means that 16% of the time she's going to act on that aspect. And if you're looking at different aspects, suppose something comes into play. Suppose Saturn trine Pluto comes into play at the same time that Jupiter opposite Pluto comes into play. If things are most likely to tilt toward the Jupiter opposite Pluto because it's just a little bit stronger, 2% stronger. And you can see that the Mars Jupiter and the Sun Jupiter those are all pride aspects, but they're the weakest things in her administration. The only thing I know that in her administration that was a pride battle was the war with Argentina. It was a matter of British pride that we're not going to be shoved out of the Falklands Islands, which the Argentinians called Malvinas. If you remember that, that was pretty much an act of pride more than anything else, because there isn't any great strategic value anymore to the Falklands Islands. All right, does everybody see what we've done? You've got...
You just said the first 2 out of the 3 aspects are conservative?
Yes.
So aspects are conservative?
Well, because of the planets that are in them. Because Pluto is very conservative and Saturn is very conservative. Jupiter can sometimes be conservative.
Well, conservative as opposed to what else?
Liberal, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Uranus is liberal, and
So
Jupiter is liberal, and Mars is usually liberal. All right.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
The one thing I'm not following on, even though you stated it was an error, how at any time could, even if they were in a different position, could Saturn and Pluto give light?
Oh, only if it was in that very small, if Saturn, there's an error that shouldn't have been entered into the chart, but if Saturn were at 1431, it would pull together the orb between Pluto and Jupiter, because it's in between the orb of the two planets. See, everything from 29 to 45, if something is at 14 degrees and minutes between 29 and 45, then that would collect light for these two planets.
Okay, so it's not a matter of, how should we say it, light in terms of what you would expect the sun or the moon to give, it's light in terms
That's right.
of, okay.
Right. It's an ancient term that still applies, but when something brings together two other planets, that is called a collection of light. And what takes place between planets is called light. It's not like we see with our eyes, but it's an ancient astrological designation. William Lilly used it a lot. All right, questions?
Just one thing.
Yes.
The F and the L designation in the orb column never really came up.
Yes, the first phase or last phase. Remember last time I gave you those two?
Yeah, but it didn't come up in these
No,
calculations. Right.
no. But it makes profiling a lot easier.
Right.
And because it falls in between the minutes, is what he's saying,
Yeah.
that it adds oomph to the,
The collector adds oomph to its aspects.
yes.
It would collect light with Jupiter and with Pluto, so the whole thing would be pulled together.
It's aspecting both of them.
But it's aspecting both of them, but it's not in between their. It's not between their orb.
It's not in between 1445 and 1429.
Let's look at the other one. Jupiter.
That I can.
Yeah. See, this one is in between 28 and 23, and that pulls this aspect together more strongly. You could say that this aspect is enhanced because both aspects, both aspects Saturn, but it's not really a collection of light. Then it's a pattern distribution, and at the end is when we come to the patterns. We got at least a year to go yet before we've looked at all we're going to look at with the aspects.
I've already done this.
No. We have only 2 more meetings where we do this estimation stuff, and then we apply it, and then we move on to other things. We move on to parallels, and then we move on to aspect patterns, and then we move on to archetypal families of aspects, and that's as far as we go with it. And
There's
this,
a lot of charts with these, Richard.
yes, there's going to be a lot
And
more.
I tried to look at them also on my own, and then I swore I'd never do it again. Here I am.
Yeah.
A lot of the tests I like a lot.
Yeah. It took a lot of years to figure this out,
Yeah.
And it doesn't disagree with any major astrologers that I know of, which makes me worry about it. Well, I'm not going to go walking if it's cold and wet out there, Bob.
It's cold and wet.
All right. Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I got a recorder on it. Have you stopped the?
Not yet, because I don't want to hit the wrong buttons.
Oh yeah.